and welcome to October's Oracle Apex Office Hours. My name is Shakib Rahman, and I'm an architect on the Oracle Apex team. And we've got an exciting session for you today. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is a few updates and announcements. And to kick things off, show a quick replay, or really just talk about a replay of last month's Office Hours. This is all about universal theme in 21.1 and how you can make the most of it. So you can watch the live replay on apex.oracle.com/office hours, and you can also watch all of the existing office hours at the same place. I also want to take a few moments to talk about the upcoming office hours. So we've got the office hours today, but after that, 2 weeks later, on November 4th, we have the second part of this series on the Apex 21.2 new features. On November 18th, we've got the session on how to use vanity URLs for your autonomous database service. And on December 2nd, we have the flows for Apex 21.1. With that being said, for today's office hours, this is really just the part one for Apex 21.2 new features. And these are just some of the features we're going to cover today. So I'll kick things off to John a little bit later to talk about smart filters. Then Carsten will talk about the REST service catalog and more. He'll also talk about the email enhancements in this latest release. Stefan Dobre will talk about the static file editor. And finally, we'll have a Q&A at the end. The session may run a little bit long. It may go over an hour, so please do stay on if you want to be here for the Q&A. I expect that we'll go over by 15 or 20 minutes. The part two of this series, the new features, will be on November 4th. And just be careful with the timing. It will be at 10 p.m. Eastern. However, in different locations, you might have daylight savings time differences. So just watch out. For that session, we will be featuring the progressive web apps features, as well as the updated page positioning and greater flexibility with page layout. That will be covered by Vincent Murnau. I will speak to the universal theme enhancements, and Daniel will talk about the geospatial and geocoding enhancements. And we'll also have a few more. There's a number of events coming up very soon. So I wanted to outline just some of them that are happening in the next few months. Earlier today, there was the first ever Oracle Apex Africa conference. We've got events with the Oracle database world, and that's happening in the Americas, in Europe, and in JPAC, where we'll have sessions on Apex. There's also the Spain Oracle User Group Conference, November 3rd, the Latin America Oracle User Group Conference. There's a number of events in Australia as well. So there's a webinar series. There's the Apex Developer Day. There's the Groundbreakers virtual tour. There's the UK OUG conference as well. There's DOAG and a whole lot more. I also want to take a moment to talk about Joel Coleman Day. So every year, Tim Hall from Oracle Base organizes this Oracle Community Day, and this year it was named in honor of Joel. So Joel Coleman Day. There was an incredible 67 blog posts published on that day relating to Oracle technology, and many of these were focused on people's experiences with Joel and also using Oracle Apex. So I really encourage you to check this out. You can actually just go and Google Joel Coleman Day. You can look it up on Twitter, and there'll also will be a link in the show notes. Another really great initiative from the Apex community is something called Apex D2D. This is developers helping developers. And what I really liked about this is it sort of brings back the feeling you had when you went to a conference. Apex D2D is all about real-time problem solving for Apex developers by Apex developers. It's similar to this thing we had at some of the conferences where we'd have office hours. So you can sign up and say, hey, I want to speak with Patrick or Mark or someone else from the Apex team for a 30-minute chunk of time, and you could talk to them about your specific Apex problems. Well, with the pandemic and not a whole lot of in-person conferences, how can we bring this experience in a virtual way? So I really want to thank the organizers of this really incredible initiative. It allows you to sign up for some time, and you get one-on-one time to get help on your Apex problem. So you can go to apexcdd.net. You can learn more. You can also sign up to be a helper, and it launches on November 30th. And this is coming from our partners and the Apex community. So I just want to say a huge shout out to them. I also want to talk about some of the Apex service updates and for the Apex service and Apex on Autonomous Database. In September 2021, so just last month, we enabled support for vanity URLs, and you can visit this blog post, and there will also be an office hour sessions on this on November 18th. This month, we rolled out Apex 21.1 for free autonomous database services. That was starting on October 11th, and it will be available to all remaining customers starting October 27th. You can also visit the Apex website and their autonomous database. There's a link for service updates, and you can always see the latest and greatest over there. I'd like to talk about the Apex patch set bundle. So the Apex 21.1 patch set bundle 5 is now available, and this is keeping in track with our cadence of having a new patch set bundle around every month. Once the patch set applied, once this patch set is applied, your Apex version will be 21.1.5. You can download this via My Oracle support, and you can also visit all the known issues just by going to apex.oracle.com/known issues. I also want to say that apex.oracle.com has been upgraded to a pre-production release of Apex 21.2. So the latest release of Apex is available right now for you to try. If you have a workspace on apex.oracle.com, you can already sign into it and start using it. You can try out all the new features. This is a pre-production release, so there will be a few changes from this release to the production release. You can learn about all the new features as well on our website. Just go to the Apex homepage, you'll see a What's New button, click on that. The one thing to note here is that the documentation will be published upon the production release. I want to take a few moments to talk about the Apex Ideas application. We've been online for about 2 months now, and the response that we've seen is simply incredible. So I really want to first say thank you for everyone for sharing your ideas. And I want to give you an update on sort of what's happening with the Ideas app and sort of where we are. So far, there's engagement from over 3,400 distinct users. So these are people that have either posted a feature, commented on a feature, voted on a feature. I always like to say that Apex community is really a global community. And in just in the short 2 months of the users that have provided their country information, their location information, there are already 31 distinct countries. So ideas coming in from 31 different countries. There's 470 plus ideas that are published on the website right now with over 600 comments and over 3,700 votes cast. There's also a number of improvements we've been making to this application. Very recently, we rolled out an update that will now give you email notifications when a feature that you submitted has been updated, if there's new replies. We're also working on a number of user experience enhancements. There's also new filters, there's new cleaner status structure, so you really know where your feature is. In Apex 21.2, we've already delivered 10 of these ideas that were submitted in the Ideas application. So here's just some of them. I know that for Apex 21.2, the Ideas app came in a little bit late, but we hope to increase this number over time. And in the future releases, we really hope to accommodate, and really see which ideas are important to you as a community and see what we can put into the product. So I expect this list to grow over time. If you have an idea on how you can make Apex better, or how we can make even a small experience a little bit more effortless or a little bit less painful, right? I encourage you to share it with us. Go to apex.oracle.com/ideas. But you don't have to have an idea to visit the website and share something. You can also go there, you can look at other ideas, you can provide support for something, you can comment if you think an idea is worthwhile, you can vote an idea up. We take a lot of that into consideration as we see what is important to the community. So with that being said, I want to go into today's office hours. Again, this is part 1. And the agenda is as follows. So we'll first start with smart filters. We'll go into the REST service catalog and email enhancements, then the static file editor, and we'll have some Q&A at the end. So before I pass it to John, I want to take a few moments to talk about what this smart filters component is. Smart filters is a new component in Apex, and it's really the result of an effort from the Oracle design team. For those that might not be aware, there is an entire team at Oracle, the Oracle design team, that is responsible for the Redwood design system that is being applied across all of Oracle products, all of our services, our websites, our branding. Really, every touch point that Oracle has is being designed properly. The smart filters in Apex is really the initial release, and it's the first time that we are really taking up a component that was designed by a proper, full-on design team. And I would even say that this is probably one of the most thought out and well, documented components there is. So just to sort of show you what goes on behind the scenes of a component like this is just some of the spec for the smart filters component. And our role for the Apex development team is to realize this spec and put this into product so that you can use it. I do want to say that this is really the first time this component is going to be used at scale by all of our, our customers. So you, as an Apex developer, when you use smart filters, we'd love to hear that feedback and sort of see, like, what we can do better, and we can convey that feedback to the Oracle design team. I want to take a few moments to show you a small video about these smart filters before I pass it over to John to go into a demo. Oracle Apex 21.2 introduces Smart Filters, a new search component that enables users to find information using filter suggestions or search terms. It all begins with a search field that is anything but ordinary. Below the search field, you will see a list of filter suggestions or chips that are based on your data. These chips provide immediate context of the data you're looking at. For example, right away you can tell that the top winning team is Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton was the top winning driver, the top decade was 2010s with the most races, and the Italian Grand Prix had 72 races. These suggestions are at the heart of smart filters, and these are based on the filters you have defined and are immediately updated as you perform searches. You can interact with these chip suggestions simply by clicking on the chip value, in this case Ferrari, and the filters will be immediately applied. If I instead click on the chip label, I'll see a menu of the various options for that filter, and then I can go and make a selection. You'll notice that as I make selections, the chips are immediately updated to reflect the data at hand. Now let's go and clear these search filters and start from scratch. This time, I'm going to start searching for Max. I'll select Max Verstappen and notice that the chips refresh automatically. Now I'm going to select the Austrian Grand Prix, and at this point, the chips disappear. This is intentional, as the remaining filters provide very little value to restrict the dataset any further. The result is a simplified experience that eliminates clutter and complexity. Now let's take a look behind the scenes to see how this is put together. On my page, I have a Smart Filters region that controls my search component, as well as a data region, which in this case is a classic report. The Smart Filters region has a number of filters defined, which are then displayed as chips below the search field. This is just like configuring facets for the faceted search component. Think of Smart Filters as a simpler approach to providing the same type of search within your application without the complexity and real estate overhead of displaying these facets on screen. Now let's make a small change to this application to hide the chips entirely so that all interactions happen directly through the search bar. There's a property to configure the maximum number of suggestion chips. Let's set this to 0 and hide them entirely. Now, my search filter search field provides all the capabilities of searching while completely minimizing the UI footprint. With Smart Filters in Apex 21.2, you can provide your users with an entirely new search experience that makes it easier than ever before to find information they're looking for. Right, now I'd like to pass it on to John.
Thank you, Shakib. Okay, thanks for that, setting that context for Smart Filters. And I'll be demonstrating that now. So the purpose of Smart Filters is exactly the same as faceted search, which is to quickly and easily narrow down report results based on characteristics and search terms that the user is interested in. The main difference is that Smart Filters takes up less space and has a modern UI design. And to show the comparison, here's what faceted search looks like on the same typical data set, the employees table. You can see that faceted search is typically on the left-hand side, and you can see all of your facets at once, but it takes up a fair amount of space. Then here's what Smart Filters looks like on the same data set, and it's typically placed at the top of the screen, typically in a area like the breadcrumbs. It doesn't scroll away, so it's always available. And it's an important thing to understand is that faceted search and Smart Filters share a large amount of code. The engine that calculates all the counts is the same, and even the client side uses a lot of the same code, but with slightly different code paths for the different main UI. And they have the for example, on the client side, they have the same API, which is now documented starting this release. And so a lot of things that you'll see in smart filters is also stuff you'll recognize as being the same in faceted search. The terms facet and filter are technically a little different, but in common usage, they are often interchangeable. Smart filters uses the term filter and faceted search uses facets, even though they are both technically dealing with facets. Users, of course, are more likely familiar with the term filter. First, I'll show how to use the smart filters, and then we'll look at its configuration and how it can be created. So there's two parts to it. Basically, there's the search bar, and then underneath there are suggestion chips. When you click into the search bar, you'll see a drop down that at first shows you all of the filters that have been defined. So we'd see job, department, tags, and so on. When you start typing, it will start filtering and giving you suggestions on not just what facets. You can see it matched salary, which is the name of a facet, or I'm sorry, a filter, but also the particular values. And then you can pick one when you see the one that you want. And then it will show you that filter has been applied. This is the applied chips area. And we can see that it's now been filtered on the salesman. Now, if you click on this, you can open up and see all of the different choices, and you can add to them and remove, and they're updated in real time. Now, once you select multiple values, it will show just how many you've selected. When there's just one, it will show the name of that value. And as we saw in the video, once you filter down the results so that there's only a few remaining, the suggestions are not as important, so they go away. But that doesn't mean you can't continue to filter. And you can see that there are tags that we can select. So you can continue to filter. Yeah, so to get rid of these, you just can click on the X or open them to change things. And you can, I'm going to click on sales again. And so you can also type in search terms. So if we type in, change this to department sales. And if we type in a search term of, let's say, Java. So this, even though it matched some tag values, I didn't select the tag, so I'm just searching on the word Java. And one difference from faceted search is that you can type in multiple search terms. Well, I guess all it's matching is this. I could type in something from here, and it will, continue to filter on multiple search terms. There's not a whole lot of data in this simple data set. And the search terms are also editable. So if you click on them, then you can just edit this, this search term and also delete it with the X button as well. The suggestion chips have two different places you can click. If you click on the value, then it will immediately filter by the value that you clicked on. And if you want to change it, you can open it up Or if you click on the filter label, then it immediately gives you the choice of what to filter on. So you have two quick ways of getting to the filters that you're interested in. Now, if you select many things, at some point it will run out of room, and then you have an overflow chip. If you click on the overflow chip, then you can see everything, even the stuff that doesn't fit, and then you can go and either modify it or remove it. And so this Smart Filters is fully keyboard accessible. I won't show all of that, but there's one tab stop for the input search field, and then there's another tab stop for the suggestions, and you can use the arrow keys to move among the suggestions. And then this makes it more obvious that there's two different targets to the chip, and you can use the tab key or shift tab to move between those, but arrow keys to move between the different chips. In the here, once you've selected something, even the up and down arrow keys work here. Once you've selected something, the arrow keys move, the left, right arrow keys, the down arrow key, they kind of do what you would expect in this field. And you can use either the enter key to open this, or use the delete or backspace key to delete one of these chips. So that covers how to use the Smart Filters, and let's take a look at the configuration to see what else it can do. You'll notice that if you've used faceted search at all, it's been out a few releases, so hopefully you have had a chance to use faceted search. You'll notice that the configuration is very similar. It supports the same set of types for your filters, except for two currently. The select list doesn't make too much sense, because you wouldn't want to open something up and then have to open up a select list, but there are ways to handle that, and there are advantages to using select lists. So hopefully it will come in the future, because select lists can do things like have option groups that these others cannot. The other one that's missing is the single checkbox, and that is a limitation that will hopefully be addressed in the future. So a lot of the configuration, like I said, when we get down to the list entries, this should be very familiar. There's a couple of things that don't make sense for faceted search, like setting a minimum height, or making the facet collapsible, or minimum displayed, and then there is no chart related settings. But a lot of the list settings are all the same. There's still the cascading that you can set up, and also the depending on, making one filter condition on another, which is a very powerful filter. And faceted search is also, again, because a lot of the code is the same. So this depending on feature works as well with Smart Filters. So when I did show setting tags, and didn't really go into it at the time, but this is a really important new feature that applies to both Smart Filters and faceted search, because we have a tags column. The tags can have multiple values in them, and you can select any number of these. So this is the first time that we've been able to handle multiple values in a column. And again, that applies to both faceted search and smart filters. The configuration for it is here. Once you've selected something that uses a list of values like the checkbox group, you can scroll down to where it says multiple values. You have a few choices here. The default is no, but if it's a multi-valued column, you can set it to either a delimited list or a JSON array. And you can specify the separator. In my case, it's a comma that the values are separated by. And unless you're really sure that your data is clean and doesn't have spaces around the tags or whatever the values are, you'll want to put this trim white space on. And you can choose whether the combination is done with and or. So very powerful new capability for both faceted search and smart filters there. One thing that is particular to smart filters is this new group of options which control the suggestions. Let's go back and look at this page and notice that, so you have a bunch of suggestion chips and you might wonder, well, where do these suggestions come from? And the answer is this configuration right here. There are different kinds of suggestions, including none. So you may have some filters that you just not use that often. And so the commission and being able to search using contains within a single column, the name column, those were considered not that important. So the suggestions are set to none for each of these. And that is why they don't show up in the list of suggestions down here. But you can also set it to dynamic, in which case it will choose, the client looks at the counts that come back, and you can see, well, there are 6 results that would have the value clerk. That happens to be the highest number for this small data set. And so it chooses clerk to put in the suggestion. But that may not be the appropriate thing. The one that has the most counts may not be the one that you want to suggest to your users. And so for that, you can set a static value. And you can also use a Sql query. So if you want to take other information into consideration, maybe you want to consider this, what to suggest based on the user's role, or maybe you have a separate table that collects usage metrics or something like that, and you want to use that to base your suggestions on, you can do so here. I don't have an example of that, but those are the other choices that are available to you. This option here to show the label or not is what that means is the label of the filter. So here, this is the job filter, the department filter, and tags and so on. But there are some things that really you don't need to explain to someone that clerk or salesman is the job. It's pretty obvious from the value. I'll click on a different example here. And here we can see, among other things, that it just says clerk. And if you select it, now it tells you what it is here when it's applied, and you see all these values. But when it's a suggestion, then it takes up less space when it's intuitive or just obvious what the value is. And so that's why we have this show label option. And this is also available in faceted search. The let's see. At the region level, just wanted to make sure I covered all of these things. Yeah, so at the region level, we have some options. Again, some of these are the same as with faceted search for showing, compact numbers like 4K instead of, 4,027, whether or not to show the total row count. And here's some that are specific to faceted, that are specific to smart filters. The maximum suggestion chips is, it defaults to 5. That's the recommended value, because you don't, just having 1 or 2 suggestions, maybe that's applicable if you only have a couple of filters, but oftentimes you'll have many, many filters and you don't want to clutter the UI with that. And so you would set the maximum number that is shown. And in the case of this small data set where there's really only a few, what I did here is, because there are only a few, I wanted to demonstrate what this more filters suggestion chip does. I set the maximum suggestions to 3. So if you have more filters than you've set the maximum to, you can have a more filter suggestion chip, which will add this button here. And when you click it, you'll see anything that didn't fit in that max. So I set the max to 3. We see the 3 suggestions, and then anything that didn't fit, you can see on this more filters drop down. Get rid of that. So another thing was this collapsing behavior you might have noticed, where it takes up even less space. The setting for that is not in the global settings, but it's actually here on the search configuration, where you have this option here. The default is off, I believe. In this case, I turned it on to demonstrate how you can have collapsed smart filters where it takes up only 1 line instead of 2. And you can immediately start filtering on something just by clicking, or if you want to, start typing something like, you want to do a search instead of selecting a filter, then you can just click on, this button here. Let's see if there's any other one. You would use the Create Page Wizard. This is also available in the Create Application Wizard. It's in reports right next to faceted search. And you've noticed in all these examples, the smart filters are in the breadcrumb area. So a couple of tips when you're going to create a smart filters. Number 1, make sure you've updated to the latest universal theme. That will really help. And the second is add a breadcrumb area if you want the smart filters to go in your breadcrumb area. And I won't go through all the steps to create because it's pretty much the same as with faceted search. Okay, so last thing, when to use smart filters, when to use faceted search. The main thing to realize is that smart filters is not a replacement for faceted search. There's different use cases for both. It's not like faceted search is going away. You should try out both of them, because the important thing is to focus on the user's needs. If you have users that are familiar with the facets pattern because it's been around longer, then maybe that's the right thing to use. If you've got a UI that really needs a lot of screen real estate and you don't want the searching to take up a lot of room, then the smart filter is the way to go. So it's really up to you which one to use. And so I'm going to stop there and turn it over to you again, Shakib. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'd like to pass it over to Karsten to talk about REST improvements.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shakib and John. Yeah, after the totally and brand new smart filters region, we are now coming to something which already existed before, but where we added quite a few improvements. And let me share my screen first. I would like to talk a bit now about the new REST source catalogs and a new pagination feature for REST data sources, which we think are pretty good improvements to make your daily work with external REST APIs a bit easier. And to get everybody onto the same page, I would like to first quickly walk you through the existing wizard on how to create a new REST data source. It will be quick, but let's just recall it once so that we are all on the same page to show the new feature afterwards. So when we have a REST API to integrate, we would go to shared components, REST data sources. We would kick up the create new REST data source wizard. We would paste in the URL, provide a name, click the next wizard. Right, we would then see the remote server step, click next. There is no authentication for this one, click next, and we would click discover. And then we would see the data preview, which should come in a few seconds. Okay, it doesn't work yet. Interesting. So in that case, it didn't work. But anyway, the thing is, we have to create, or we have to use the wizard to create a new REST data source. And maybe others in the company already did that, or maybe others in the community already did that. Or maybe we don't have just that one single REST API we want to integrate. Maybe there are 10 APIs to integrate and somebody else already did that. So we don't want to run that wizard over and over again. And also we don't want to change manually added things which the wizard didn't get from the beginning over and over again. The wizard is quite easy, it's just 4 steps. But if you want to integrate more REST APIs, it's hopefully even easier, right? And that's what REST source catalogs are for. A REST source catalog, and we are maintaining this in the workspace utilities area. And there you will find the new REST source catalogs thing. And the REST source catalog is a collection of templates for external REST APIs. And from those templates, we can more easily create REST data sources. And I have prepared a REST source catalog, which I would now like to import. So let's import that. Let's pick the file to import. And here is on my desktop, I have a sample catalog with a few REST APIs from GitHub. So GitHub provides almost all its functionality as REST APIs, and for reading, there are REST APIs for the repositories of a user, for the commits to a given repository, for the issues to a given repository, for the attributes for a specific user, and the list goes on and on and on. And as a preparation for this office hours, I took the time to prepare a REST source catalog for a few of those APIs. So let's import that REST source catalog. And you can see this pretty much works like an Apex application export. And the catalogs, you can have multiple catalogs in your workspace, and these are organized in groups, or you can also call it categories if you will. So let me call that catalog group Internet APIs, and let me import the catalog into my workspace. And there we are. So we have a catalog with 7 services. I can see a bit of a description here, and it's also possible if you have that catalog export file on an intranet or internet URL, you can provide that URL here and refresh from the URL. You don't have to download and import the new versions then, and we can also have a look into the services. And here we see what we have in the catalog. Each service comes with details, the base URL, and you can see that this pretty much matches what we have in REST data sources. All right, so what can we do with that catalog? This looks nice to browse, but there should be at least a little bit of more value to this. So let's go to Application Builder again, to Shared Components, and again to REST data sources. So now, as we have a catalog installed into our workspace, we have another option here. So we can create REST data sources from a REST source catalog. So, and when we have chosen this, we get a slightly different screen, and we can now pick the REST data sources we want to add. So there is no discovery anymore. Everything comes from the REST data source, from the REST source catalog, and we can assume that the REST source catalog was carefully edited by somebody who really worked out which attributes to expose as the data profile, which methods to expose, and that the names and descriptions are accurate. So we want to have the commits by user and category. I want to have the repositories by users, and I also want issues. There are the issues, and issues have comments. So let me give that one as well. So I want to have those 4. I'm not interested in the other ones. And then I can say next. So all these REST APIs are unauthenticated. So you can also store the information into the catalog, whether a REST API requires authentication. But as always, of course, sensitive credentials will not be added to the catalog, right? So we can review what we did, go back if we want to change, or simply create it. And what we now have is a collection of 4 REST data sources. And when we look at the commits by user and repository, we can see everything is pre-populated, right? And the data profile, and that's highlights a bit the value of this, right? You can see the data profile only contains 13 columns. So whenever you try this out manually and create a REST data source on GitHub commits, after discovery, you will get back 60 or 70 columns. GitHub provides a lot of attributes which we probably will never use, reference attributes to other URLs, and this is all now pre-configured, so I don't have to take the burden to walk through the attributes. Oh, what do I need? What can we drop? This is all already done. So we have a ready-to-use REST data source. So let me test this to see whether my networking is actually okay here. So and these are the commits for the Oracle database examples repository of Oracle. So this one works, and I could now go ahead and start building reports, forms, charts, and other stuff on top of this. And we can also, maybe I want to change something here. So let me say, I would like, so I'm doing any sort of change, right? And I want to write something back to the catalog. Maybe I'm working together with the editor of the catalog, and I want to provide a new version. So I can apply my changes here, and then I can save my REST data source back to the catalog. Or I did a change, which I don't like, and get me back to what I had in the catalog. Refresh this from the template. And this also shows you how you can build a catalog, right? A catalog is being built by first creating REST data sources in your application, getting that to work, testing them, fine-tune the data profile, the parameters, get everything into a shape where you like it, and then save it to the catalog. And that's how I built the catalog. And once you have your catalog done, you have added all your services to the catalog, you can go ahead, export the catalog, provide it within the company or on the internet if you like. All right. This is basically how the catalog works. And what I would like to also show is, as we now have seen how Apex 21.2 can significantly make the creation of new REST data sources easier. And when I think about what you might have in your company, you might have SaaS applications where you have maybe 20, 30, 40 different REST APIs you might want to use in your Apex application, and then having such a catalog with this work already done would be a great benefit for every Apex developer in the company. Okay, so we now have the REST source catalog. There is another feature in Apex 21.2 regarding REST, which I would like to introduce to you now. And as you can see, the GitHub, that REST data source is a simple HTTP REST data source type. And if you work with REST data sources in earlier releases, you have learned simple HTTP. And remember, that's what I always said in sessions like this office hours or at conference presentations. Simple HTTP means the Apex knows nothing. Apex doesn't know how this external REST API does pagination. It does not know how to pass a filter, so simple HTTP is dumb. So for 21.1, we thought, okay, if simple HTTP was so dumb, how can we make it a bit smarter, right? We found after some discussion and investigation that there are, and that's what I also always said, the pagination schemes, there is no standard for this on the internet. It's always different. Give me 5 REST APIs and you probably have 6 variants of doing the pagination. So how the REST API returns a larger data set to you in pages. But however, after some investigation, we found that there are many different things, but you can categorize them to, let's say, 3 categories. And most of the REST APIs fall into one of those 3. So what you now have with the simple HTTP type is declarative pagination. And the GitHub APIs fall into the page size and page number category. So you can append the per page parameter to your GitHub URL, and then you can pass a page size. And the maximum is 100. So you can't pass more. GitHub will not give you more in a page. And you can provide the page number URL parameter, which tells the GitHub API which specific page you want to have. And using those 2 parameters, you can build up your pagination scheme and fetch through the result list. So I have declared that in Apex, here as declarative attributes, no pure SQL coding, no need for a plugin. Let's now try out whether this works. I'm using the synchronization feature for this. Let me quickly create a table. Let me create the table actually. And now I have a table which is ready for synchronization. And let me kick off the synchronization. So I want to download all the commits for the Oracle DB examples repository down to my local database. And this should run for a few seconds. And then we will see whether Apex was able to leverage these declarative parameters to get all the data. So the GitHub API for unauthenticated users like me, it's not the fastest. I'm probably always at the end of the queue for everything. So let's give it another few seconds. There we are. And let's see what we have. So we have synchronized 864 rows in 9 requests. So when we look at the log, obviously Apex nicely followed the pagination scheme to fetch all the 864 rows into our local table and to get the whole result set. And I think this dramatically simplifies things when you're working with an external REST API, which is not ORTS, but which falls into one of these declarative categories. So because you don't need any custom PSQL code or any plugin anymore. And here's our table. And there we are. All the commit information to Oracle DB examples nicely in my local table. Okay, so much about the REST new features. The next thing I would like to show to you is a collection of improvements we did in the email area. Right, so for sending out emails, you know there is the Apex mail package where you can use or send out emails with SQL programmatically. And there is also a send email page process. And there is also a thing like email templates. Email templates are probably, regarding email, one of the most useful features because it really eases the task of sending out nicely formatted emails and to parameterize them before sending them out. And here are the email templates. And as in a good cooking show, I prepared one in advance. And let me show you the first thing we did based on lots of community requests. Here we go. The long requested or often frequently requested copy email template functionality at your fingertips. There you are. I think I don't need to demo that. Try it out on apex-oracle.com. But I would like to show you something else. So we don't need to look into that email template. It's really a bit of a testing template. Email templates, a bit of a disadvantage. All the last releases was that to use email templates, you had to use PL/SQL and the Apex Mitten package. Right? When we look at declarative functionality, so I'm opening Page Designer for my page one in this application here. Come on. And then I have my processing section, and there is the send email declarative process. And this is more or less what you're used to, right? You can provide the from, the CC, the BCC, so the addresses, then a plain text body, a HTML body, and a SQL query for attachments. But that's it, that was it. Right? There was no way to leverage the email template in the declarative process, which was a shortcoming, and which we thought about. This should be closed, this gap, right? So, and here you can see we have a declarative attribute to pick an email template, and for a template there are placeholders, and this is how you assign the placeholders. So when you have a placeholder in your template, Apex detects that placeholder and shows it in that dialog, and you can go ahead and assign page items to the placeholders. Everything declarative. And there is also a language override. So if you have translations for your application, then the email template is also translated, of course. And now I might want to send different language or emails in different languages to different recipients. And that's what the language override attribute does. Okay, let's try this out. We run that application page, and first let me just give try out John Doe, and John Doe is an analyst. I'm just making a bit of stuff up, right? And I'm leaving the language thing empty for now, and let me send the email. And let me also send out to Max Mustermann. It's clearly German, so he wants to have a German email, of course. And let me get that one out as well. And let's now have a look into my email folder. And there we are, right? So John Doe, come on, John Doe got the English emails with the template, with the placeholders being replaced. And Max Mustermann, of course, got a German email, right? So there is an A umlaut here, so it has to be German. So translated emails, sending out translated emails becomes just a declarative text. And the final thing, before I hand over to Stefan Dope, is that if we have the send email process so nicely hooked up to support email templates, then we should leverage it in automations as well. And here I have an automation also prepared, and you can see it's based on the end table. And department number 10 gets German emails, and all the others get English emails. So this is what we have. Let's have a look into the send email process, and it looks very similar. We pick the email, we assign placeholder values, right? And we have a language override. Okay, let's just kick this one off and have a final look into, no, not this one, into emails which should be coming in now. You can see emails coming in from my end table, and I'm just watching out for the German ones. And there we are. This Miller is obviously in the department 10, so he gets a German email. And that's pretty much all I have. With these words, I'm handing over to Stefan. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Karsten. In Apex 21.2, we are introducing finally the static file editor. As you know, in Apex, we can create static application, workspace, plugin, and theme files. So these are the 4 different static file scopes, but they are basically the same thing, just scoped a bit differently. These files can be things like images or other resources, or text-based files like JavaScript or CSS files. And this is what we're interested in now. Because in previous Apex versions, in order to make edits to such a text-based file, you had to download your file from the Apex UI. You had to edit it locally in some IDE, re-upload it, then probably do that a couple of times, right? Until you made the right changes. This was a very cumbersome process. The community addressed this and released a number of third-party solutions. But finally, as of Apex 21.2, this functionality comes built in. So let's take a look at how it works. I have here the static application files report, but this will work the very same way for the other 3 types of static files as well. Before I dive into that, you might notice some changes to this page. We have some nice little icons here. They don't do much, but they are pretty. To the left of those icons, we finally have a checkbox column, which allows us to bulk delete files. Before, you had to dive into each individual file. Again, very cumbersome, or you had to delete all of the files. Now we finally get this delete checked button and this column on the left. You might also notice the updated and updated by columns, which were missing. Very simple fix, but this is finally part of every files report. You might also notice that we are now pre-filling this min substitution string if we discover that the file has a minified version as well. So if we just delete the minified version from here, the reference to this file will not contain the min substitution hash syntax. So what does the actual editor look like? Well, you can just click the file name and you will see just that. Or you can start by creating a file, right? Notice how it's not called upload file anymore. It is called create file. That's because, as you're used to, you can drag and drop a file in here, but you can also create a blank file from scratch by just specifying a file name. So I will just type in script.js. Click the create button, and we've just created a blank file. And you can see that it appeared here in the files report. We've also generated a min file, which is a bit of a giveaway for what I'm about to show. But before that, notice some controls here on the left. We have the directory, we have the file name. As a text field, we can finally rename files without having to delete or overwrite them. The reference with a very nice little button for copying to clipboard. So you copy your reference, paste it on whatever Apex page, and these 2 fields for informational purposes. So let me quickly paste some JavaScript code in here. And you can save your changes by clicking the Save Changes button, or simply hit Command S on a Mac or Control S on a Windows computer. And you will notice that our file was saved and minified. So it was saved even without submitting the page, and it was minified automatically. There were no toggles to toggle. There were no checkboxes to check. It just works like this by default. And we can prove this by looking over at the files report. Our script is 15 kilobytes and our minified script is only 4 kilobytes. We can click into it and see that our file has been minified. The very same works for CSS files. So let's do a style.css, click create, paste a bunch of CSS in here, save changes, file, saved, and minified. We can now notice the file size difference here as well. So we minify JavaScript files automatically. We minify CSS files automatically. There's one more thing, the ability to compile less files. For those who are a bit more advanced in CSS, less is a CSS pre-compiler. So preprocessor, sorry. Let's just upload a less file. It's called styling.less. Click create. This is our less file with this syntax for variables. Of course, we cannot just go ahead and use a less file in our Apex apps. It has to be compiled. How do we do that? Just save changes. And our file was saved, compiled, and minified all at once. If we look back in the report, we see styling.less, that was our main file. We see styling.css, that is our CSS file that we can use in our app, and the minified version of that file. One last thing to demo, renaming files. Let's say we don't like it being called styling. Let's say my style or something like that. Save changes. This will not only rename the current file or the base file, as we call it, but also its artifacts. So those, in this case, would be the compiled CSS file and the minified CSS file. So that's it for the static file editor. I hope you find it useful. If you do have enhancement requests, apex.oracle.com/ideas is the place for that. Back to you, Shakib and Mark.
Right. Thanks, Stefan. And thanks, everyone, for the demos.
I kind of collected a few to kind of start out with. I saw when is Apex going to be available for download question quite a lot. Unfortunately, we can't communicate any dates as per company policy. So we hope it'll be available for download soon. And of course, it's already available on apexoracle.com for you to try out. So if you want to try out any of these features, they are available there now. Then there was also a question about the ADB upgrade, when is Autonomous going to be upgraded to Apex 21.2. And Vlad answered that. We expect that to happen about 6 weeks after Apex 21.2 becomes generally available on premise. We always get questions around source control and Git and SVN integration. There are a number of ways for you to integrate and check your code into source control. There are a number of different deployment and export options that are available. We are looking at closer integration with Git in the future. Then there was also a question around friendly vanity URLs, when that becomes available on Autonomous without custom managed orts. That is actually available since September. And when you look in the Q&A, Vlad provided a blog post where that's explained in more detail. Another frequent question was around the region types supported by faceted search and smart filters, specifically whether interactive grids and interactive reports are supported, and they are not. They have their own set of filters and options. So it's a classic report, it's cards, it's calendars, maps, but not interactive reports, interactive grids. What database, minimum database for Apex? The question was specifically about the 21.1 patch set bundle, but in general, we're still supporting database 12.102 with Apex 21.1 as well as 21.2. And then also smart filters and faceted search, can they be applied to more than one report? No, they drive one filtered region.
In the meantime, I want to talk about the next session. So the next office hours will be featured on part 2 of the new features series. So this is going to be in 2 weeks on November 4th. Again, it'll be at 10 a.m. Eastern, but in Central European time, I believe it's 3 p.m. And 7:30 p.m. in Indian Standard Time. And the features that we did not cover today were progressive web apps, the greater flexibility with the page layouts, universal theme improvements, and also the geocoding and spatial enhancements. So we'll be covering those features in 2 weeks. I also want to talk about the upcoming office hours. We'll have a session dedicated entirely to setting up vanity URLs on Apex and ADB. And then on December 4th, we'll have the flows for Apex 21.1.
Oh, and there was just one question about recording. So all of these office hours are being recorded. So if you missed this one, if you're missing the one in 2 weeks, you can always go back to Apex office hours and watch the recordings there a few days after they are there. No, I think that's it for today then.
All right. Thank you everyone for attending, and we hope to see you again soon.